The Rangers get off to a rough start and cannot quite complete the comeback in Game 4 against the Canes. We talk about Trouba and Gustafsson having a tough night, but we also lay out some reasons for optimism as we look forward to Game 5.
You're Locked on the New York Rangers, your daily podcast on the New York Rangers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back, Blue Shirts fans, to episode number 1066 of the Locked On New York Rangers podcast. I'm your host, John Chick. Just want to thank you guys, as always, for making Locked On New York Rangers your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube, and we are, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So, obviously, a tough loss. The Rangers rally and down by 2 goals 2 different times in this game. They get the game tied on a buck goal by Alexis Lafreniere. He shoots off the back or the backside. Take your pick of Freddie Anderson and into the net. And at that point, you're thinking, man, the Rangers, they have them right where they want them. We know how good this team has been all season. In the third period in general, in close games, in situations where they have to come from behind to win games. And it was looking like it could happen again. Unfortunately, was not meant to be. The Canes get a power play with about 3 minutes or so to go in the game, and they convert finally on the man advantage. And obviously, we're going to go to Game 5 in Madison Square Garden in this series. But I did want to point to, one of the reasons why I think the Rangers struggle in this game, and I thought that it was because, partially at least, I'm not putting everything on these guys, so please don't, misunderstand it in that way. But I did think this was a little bit of a rough night for the Jacob Trouba, Erik Gustafsson pairing. Both of them were a -1 and just kind of looked shaky at different points throughout the game. Trouba was on the ice for all the first 3 goals that the Canes scored. I actually don't remember if he was out there for the power play goal that they scored later. I mean, you're shorthanded there, so I'm not going to put that on him either. But yeah, Trouba, this really stood out to me. I was looking at ice time for this game. He was only out there for 16 minutes and 9 seconds. Now, Jacob Trouba, after this game, has played in 65 career Stanley Cup playoff games between the Rangers and the Jets. That amount of ice time, again, 1609, is the least amount of ice time that he has ever gotten in a Stanley Cup playoff game in any of the 65 games that he's played in the postseason. And on top of that, as far as, the Ranger games go this year, that is the least amount of ice time that Jacob Trouba has gotten in any Ranger game. Now, we're going to go ahead and exclude a game where he got hurt. He only played about 7 minutes in that game. And we're also going to exclude that game against the Devils where, the brawl to start the game, 5-on-5, and 8 players got ejected. He got tossed out of that game. But if we take those off the table, yes, that was the least amount of ice time that Trouba got in a game all season. And I think it was warranted, especially when you consider that, the other Ranger defensemen have mostly played pretty well. I thought, none of them had any issues in this game either. Obviously, the Rangers lost, but I felt like overall, the rest of the Ranger blue liners mostly had their A game. And if we look at these goals here, and again, I don't mean to put everything on just 2 players, but when the Rangers have been firing on all cylinders the way that they have and just getting contributions up and down the lineup, it does tend to stand out a little bit when you have a defense pairing that struggles. Because up until Game 4 here, again, everything firing on all cylinders, everything looking good, everything clicking. And, this pairing, again, just kind of a rough night. And I look for them to bounce back in the next one. But the first goal scored by the Canes, Gustafsson had the puck kind of retreating into the Ranger zone. And it looked like he didn't really know what to do with it. So he just did like a backhand lift into the neutral zone. Canes almost gloved it down at the blue line, but goes in the neutral zone. Barclay Goodrow briefly picks it up. He gets knocked to the ice as he's passing the puck. Turnover. Kuznetsov goes in, an absolute snipe. Trouba was in front of him, but not really a whole lot that he could, do on that play. It was just a perfectly placed shot, but a kind of a misplay by Erik Gustafsson there in the first place that, led to the turnover. The second goal, this time Trouba was out there with Lindgren, and a situation where the Rangers should have been able to clear their zone, and they didn't. And as I say these things, and I'm kind of like highlighting a couple of mistakes or miscues or whatever you want to call it, it does make you appreciate how well they've played in the playoffs. And they didn't play like badly in this game. They've just played better in a lot of the other games. But it makes you appreciate the brand of essentially mistake-free hockey that this team has been playing through the first 7 games and even most of this game as well. But bit of a miscue here. Trocheck actually had the puck in the Ranger zone, pass up the boards to Panarin, and the pass wasn't really on the money, but then again, I feel like Panarin maybe could have been able to handle this a little bit better. Puck didn't come out of the zone, and that proved costly. It didn't come out of the zone again after that, at least not until after, the Canes ended up scoring a goal here. Teravainen takes a shot, the save is made, and Nason scores on the rebound. It's 2-0, just 6:33 into the game. Trouba on this play, he was on the ice, but he was engaged with Stahl kind of in the crease. They were battling for position, so can't really slam him for this. I mean, the Rangers just in general could have defended a lot better on this play. But then the third goal, this is probably the one that gets to you more than any other, because this is the one where it felt like Gustafsson and Trouba both had a miscue, and that, of course, led to the Canes scoring. Rangers had cut to 2-1 at this point. They go back up by 2 goals, do the Canes. But you've got Burns playing the puck from the blue line around the boards, and Gustafsson is there. He's behind the net, behind the goal line there. And I mean, the puck's moving fast and it's skipping a little bit, but I think if you're Gustafsson here, or really any defenseman, you got to figure out a way to knock this puck down, not let it get by you. Unfortunately, he's not able to do that. I mean, he's basically by himself back there, so he's gonna be able to intercept this puck pretty easily, and he just doesn't, and it keeps going, and it gets to Gensel, and Gensel, he comes out the other side of the net. He's kind of along the goal line there, and Trouba, I mean, again, you don't want to go all in on these guys and just bash them, but you do understand the fact that these guys have to make these decisions in basically milliseconds. But Trouba, I think he made a mistake here by going after Gensel. Now, Gensel is by himself, and obviously he's a dangerous player. We all know that, and obviously a playoff performer over the years as well. But I don't think Gensel is going to be able to score from this area on the ice. There's a very sharp angle, and Igor was there, and he was in position. He was tracking the play, and we know how good he's played. And Trouba basically leaves his post to put some pressure on Gensel. Well, that was all Gensel needed. He passes to Aho in front. Aho's wide open. Aho scores from the doorstep. And just like that, 3-1 Canes. And again, saying all this, you see a situation here where the Rangers left the front of the net, unguarded, or certainly not covered as well as it could have been. And again, just makes you very much appreciate just how well they've defended through the other parts of this series. And I know the Canes, they rack up a bunch of shots on goal and whatnot. And obviously Igor's been very good, and he's had to bail them out a couple of times every here and there. But overall, I do like the way the Rangers are playing defense. There's a couple of breakdowns early in this game, and that ended up being the difference in the Game 4 loss. It's basically just that simple. Gustafsson, he had a secondary assist. I might as well at least mention that. That was the goal that was scored by Cuylle, but he didn't really do anything. I mean, the puck bounced off him, went to Kakko. Kakko, rushes up the ice. Great pass to Cuylle. Cuylle goes in alone and scores. As far as Trouba and Gustafsson, overall, I think they've done pretty well. I feel like as far as, third pairings go, they've been just fine. They are certainly not a reason why, at least until this game, the Rangers have stumbled in any situation in the playoffs. They've 1-1 up until this game last night. But, you'll see people call for, oh, man, take Trouba out. Look, Trouba's not coming out of the lineup. We know that. He's the captain. I just don't see any kind of a situation where that occurs. I know there's some Zach Jones fans out there, and I like Zach Jones too, but I think they're going to stick with obviously Trouba, and I think Gustafsson's probably going to stay in the lineup too. When you've got a team that overall has played as well defensively and given up as few goals as the Rangers have thus far through the playoffs, I don't think you're going to make wholesale changes after one loss, even if, one pairing did have a little bit of an off night, a little bit of a rough night, and that was the case with Trouba and Gustafsson. But you know what? Put them back out there in Game 5. It's at home. Give them a chance to redeem themselves and just see what happens. And, we'll kind of just take it from there. I wouldn't change the pairings either. I would leave Trouba and Gustafsson together because obviously when Trouba and Miller were together, that wasn't really clicking so much this season. Trouba gets hurt and Miller kind of excels with Braden Schneider. Miller's been awesome. I really feel like Miller's had a nice run through the playoffs. Braden Schneider's been very good as well. So I think you're looking at a situation where Trouba and Gustafsson will continue to be the third pairing and probably will get about the same amount of ice time going forward as they did in this game. I don't know. It's not going to be exactly the same. Maybe they'll get a little bit of an uptick each, but I don't think that was an accident that Jacob Trouba, as I mentioned, fewest amount of time on the ice he's ever gotten in a Stanley Cup playoff game and fewest amount of time on the ice in any game this year for the Rangers. Obviously not counting, the two exceptions that I mentioned a little bit earlier. But I do think there are better days ahead for this pairing. Like I said, overall, I feel like they've mostly done well together since they've been put together. A lot of focus, as we've mentioned, on K'Andre Miller and how he's excelled with Braden Schneider. But Trouba, too, I think has played a little bit better with Gustafsson. And sometimes you just need a little bit of a shakeup. For the most part, it's worked. On this night, like I said, off night for Gustafsson and Trouba, but look for them to bounce back in Game 5. There's a lot of reasons to be optimistic about Game 5, in my very humble opinion. We're going to get to some of those in just a second, including the Rangers' ability to excel after a difficult loss. We saw that all season, and the Rangers haven't lost in a while, so we haven't seen it in quite some time. But that's obviously been a trademark of this team this season, and hope it continues into Game 5 in this playoff series. So we'll get to that. Bunch of other reasons for optimism as well. First, though, we definitely would like to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by Policygenius. Policygenius is the country's leading online insurance marketplace. It saves you time and money so you can provide your family with a financial safety net starting today. With Policygenius, you can find life insurance policies that start at just $292 per year for $1 million of coverage. Some options offer same-day approval and avoid unnecessary medical exams. Policygenius helps you compare your options from top companies, and their team of licensed experts is on hand to help talk you through it. Talk to a team of award-winning agents who will walk you through the process step by step. Easily compare quotes from America's top insurers in just a few clicks to find your lowest price. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonnhl or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you could save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonnhl. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. Definitely would like to thank the everydayers, as always, for tuning in. And in our next episode, going to break down whatever happens in Game 5 between the Rangers and Canes. Hopefully, it's a series-clinching win for the Rangers, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. For right now, let's take a look at some options for the aforementioned Game 5, or some reasons for optimism for the aforementioned Game 5. There we go. So, obviously, I just kind of hinted at this just a second ago there, but the Rangers do have an ability, and they've shown it all season, to bounce back from a difficult loss. That's one of my favorite trademarks of this team. When they have a night where, they don't play so well, or they have kind of like a heartbreaking loss in the regular season, maybe they lose like an overtime game or something along those lines, they tend to be at their absolute best in the following game. And I think that we're going to see the same. And I get the feeling that going home is going to be good for this team. They're going to be in Madison Square Garden. That place is going to be rocking. Something that's been a little bit of an issue for the Rangers recently is that, and when I say recently, I mean basically the last two games, but basically slow starts. Game 3 was kind of the same deal. Rangers didn't really pick it up, didn't really find their game, didn't really hit the Jets until, a couple of minutes into the second period there. I felt like that's when they really start to find it and take control of the game. And obviously you end up with an overtime win for the Rangers. That shorthanded goal in that game was obviously huge. But, I just get the feeling that that's going to be a point of emphasis from the Ranger players, from, I would say, certainly Peter Laviolette and his coaching staff, because you don't want any kind of bad habits to creep in when you're in the middle of a playoff run. And I don't think that will happen. Like I said, this was a rough start by the Rangers, and they were kind of chasing this game the rest of the way through. I mean, they stuck to who they are and, kept playing their game, and obviously came back and rallied, got this game tied late, or I guess somewhat early in the third period. But, overall, certainly they can start games a heck of a lot better than they have in these last two. And again, I think that's going to be a point of emphasis, and having the home fans, if you guys are going to the game, make some noise, get excited, give our boys, some jump right from the get-go there. So that's first and foremost. The other thing that I got to point to here, another reason for optimism, the Raiders finally got the penalties under control. Every playoff game, it feels like they're giving their opponents bare minimum of like 4 power plays, and honestly, usually more like 5 or 6. And couple ticky-tack calls here and there, and it's the playoffs, and everything is magnified, obviously, but there were some times where the Rangers have taken some penalties that maybe they didn't need to. Now, of course, the penalty kill has certainly picked them up in those situations. Rangers, though, again, they finally did the one thing that I've been saying is kind of a problem, and it's something that they have to correct going forward, and that is stop taking as many penalties. They only give the Canes 2 power plays in this game. Canes went 1 for 2. Rangers went 0 for 1. But at the very least, you're limiting their power play opportunities. And I still feel like the Rangers, when it comes to special teams, they will have the edge going forward. Obviously, in this one, it's the first time that they've lost a special teams battle against this Canes team. And for anybody that kind of, downplays the importance of special teams throughout the regular season, or the Rangers, they're just power play merchants. I present to you in this second round series between the Rangers and the Canes exhibits A, B, C, and D for why special teams are so important, because the team that has won the special teams battle in all 4 of these games has won the game. And obviously, that's been a strength for the Rangers, and we hope that it continues to be going forward. And I think it will. There weren't as many penalties called in this one. Obviously, the refs have been kind of trigger happy when it comes to penalties throughout much of this playoff run, and not just the Rangers, but I feel like around the league as well. Regardless, though, that's a situation that I think is good. They got the penalties under control and did not allow the Canes to get chance after chance after chance. I don't need any more, third period, late in the third period power play chances or overtime power play chances or anything like that for the opposition. The Rangers came up clutch in those spots earlier in the series, and obviously, have largely dominated special teams, and we hope they get back to that in Game 5. But again, the first step is just eliminating the amount of time that you're spending in the penalty box. I think another really positive sign from this game, Rangers got some secondary scoring. We know the top guys for the Rangers have been buzzing all playoffs. You look at Mika and Trocheck. Those two have been leading the way. Lafreniere looked like a man possessed in this game last night. He's played great the entire playoffs. That might have been his best game in general. We saw him getting double shifted, getting a couple extra turns out there with Mika and Kreider. And in fact, when Lafreniere scored his goal, he was indeed out there on the top line with Mika and Kreider. But you look beyond, the Panarins and, Kreider and Mika and Trocheck and Lafreniere now, and you look at some of the secondary players. The Rangers got 2 goals from bottom 6 forwards. We saw Will Cuylle score on a breakaway. We saw Barclay Goodrow score on a deflection off of a shot by Braden Schneider. And if the Rangers can start getting offensive contributions from the bottom 6 guys, then that's obviously going to be huge going forward as well. If you would have told me going into the Game 4 that we would get a goal from Barclay Goodrow and a goal from Will Cuylle, I would have probably said series over. Obviously, that didn't happen. But again, I think that really bodes well going forward, that the Rangers, they've got a lot of different players that can hurt you, a lot of different players that they feel comfortable going to in just about any situation in the game. And hey, that's obviously a very positive thing that the Rangers, they got some secondary scoring. You look around the league, I mean, pretty much every team feels like they could probably use a little bit more secondary scoring. If there's one thing that's been missing for the Rangers in this playoff run, it's exactly that. Now, of course, it hasn't been completely absent. We saw Rempe get a goal, the first goal of the playoff run for the Rangers. Goodrow's up to 4 points. That was his second goal. We saw Kakko score a big goal in the series clincher against the Caps. VZ got a couple of goals early in the playoff run. So it's been there from time to time. But to see these guys strike and come through in some big spots, obviously very much a positive thing for the Rangers going forward. Another reason that I'll go with is that I think through 4 games, Igor Shesterkin looks like the best goalie in the NHL, throughout this playoff run, and specifically these 4 games thus far against the Canes. And I think he's also outdueled Freddie Anderson. Anderson's a great goalie. He obviously didn't play in Game 3. He was back out there for Game 4. But I feel like, Igor Shesterkin is kind of stealing the show in terms of some of these highlight reel saves. And he's been beaten far less frequently on low danger to medium danger to maybe even medium high danger kind of scoring opportunities. You're not going to be Igor right now unless there's a deflection or it's just an absolute snipe, a perfectly placed shot. That's how Kuznetsov scored early in this game. Right now, I just feel like Igor is outdueling Freddie Anderson. He's just in such a good place right now that I feel like he's going to come back even stronger. We did see his playoff streak of 30 straight games of 3 goals or fewer get snapped in this one. Obviously, he ends up giving up 4 goals, but regardless, Igor Shesterkin looking good. Rangers are winning the goalie duel, and for me, that's always a big part of the playoffs is how well your goalies are playing. So one more reason I'll throw here, and then we'll move on to some lineup decisions that the Rangers are going to have for Game 5. Kind of an oversimplification here, but I do feel like once the Rangers went up 2-0 in this series, the mission statement was very, very simple. And again, it's an oversimplification. But at that point, you've held serve. You've won both your games at 2. You're riding high out after an overtime Game 2 victory. You're going on the road for 2 games. What the Rangers had to do is exactly what they did. They had to win one of the 2 games on the road. Now, of course, you win Game 3, whether you're a player, whether you're a fan, anybody that roots for the Rangers in any capacity, I think for sure, once you go up 3-0, you smell blood, and it's like, let's just end this thing. Let's just knock them out right away. Let's get another sweep, and the Rangers can be off for as much time as possible before the next round. But With all that said, this is what they had to do. They had to win one of the two. They accomplished that feat. And when you look at recent seasons, some people talk about like, oh, the Rangers, they get up 2-0 and then there's problems. Well, yeah, sort of. I mean, 2 years ago, the Tampa Bay series, Rangers got up 2-0. They're going on the road. They lose both those games. If you win one of them, you've got the series by the throat and you're completely in the driver's seat. Same deal last year. Now, of course, last year, the Rangers started on the road against the Devils, won both of those games. But then again, you got to come home and win at least one of the two. Rangers failed to do that. This year, it's different, though. Obviously, the Rangers against the Capitals, they win the first two. They complete the sweep on the road. And in this one, again, very much doing what they had to do. Now up 3-1 in the series after splitting the 2 games in DC. And I'll just kind of propose a question here to everybody, because people get nervous, and I get it. There's never a comfortable moment in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But if we said before the season, or even at the start of the playoffs, that the Rangers would have the best record in the league and they would play the Capitals and they would sweep them and they would be up 3-1 against the Carolina Hurricanes going home for Game 5 in Madison Square Garden, there is not a Ranger fan on this planet that's not going to sign up for that opportunity. And that's what this is. It's a great opportunity for the Rangers, a chance to close it at home in Madison Square Garden. Again, would have been nice to get the sweep here, but nobody was picking a sweep in this series either way. The most diehard Ranger fans, the most diehard Kane fans on the planet, nobody thought either one of these teams was going to win in 4 games. You'll see the occasional Rangers in 5, Canes in 5. Nobody was picking a sweep. It's obviously not going to be a sweep, but I said coming into the series, I'd be very surprised if it went less than 6, but the Rangers are a home win away from doing exactly that. So definitely looking forward to Game 5 at Madison Square Garden. And in just a second, we are going to shift our attention to some of the lineup decisions that the Rangers have already faced and will continue to face going forward as well. All right, just want to take a minute to let everybody know that today's episode of Locked On New York Rangers is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you are burning rubber and not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home those huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. All right, let's go ahead and keep everything rolling here. I want to shift our attention to some of the lineup decisions, and obviously Filip Chytil, that wasn't a decision so much as it was kind of, an unpleasant surprise for all of us because Filip Chytil came back in Game 3, looked really good. He had that drive to the net, made a nasty move. It looked like he was going to score. Obviously was not able to do so. But then comes the news that kind of surprised all of us that, Filip Chytil woke up on the day of Game 4 and just didn't feel well. Now, Peter Laviolette was asked about this going into the game. He played it pretty close to the vest, as, the Rangers typically do that. But he said it was an illness for Filip Chytil. He did not confirm nor deny that it was related to Filip Chytil's concussions, or I guess we could still call them suspected concussions because they just will not use that word, which, I understand it to an extent, but I think it's pretty obvious that's what's going on here. But Laviolette said that Filip Chytil felt great after Game 3, but he woke up in the morning and just did not feel well. He did not take part in the pregame skate of this game either. Johnny Brodzinski and Matt Rempe were both on the ice for the Rangers, but all indications were that Johnny Brodzinski was going to play this game. He was going to be in the lineup based on what was happening during the Ranger practice a little bit earlier in that day. And also the fact that at that practice, Rempe and some of the other extras stayed out on the ice, after the practice session had concluded. But as far as the lineup, you get the same top 6, which, I think you have to keep going with that. And then you have a third line of Cuylle, Wennberg, and Kakko, which is back to what it was before Chytil got into the lineup. And of course, as we mentioned, Cuylle scored a goal in this game. Kakko had the primary assist, a really nice pass on that play. And honestly, this is about as good as the Ranger third line looked for just about this entire playoff run. They've been very good defensively, but they had a couple of good scoring chances in this game as well. So if you're looking for another reason of optimism to kind of harken back to what we were talking about, I think it's this. This third line looked dangerous for pretty much the entire night. But that was your third line. Your fourth line, left to right, VZ, Goodrow, and Brodzinski. And going forward, I mean, if Chytil can't go, and I mean, I'm not a doctor. I don't know what's going on, but this stuff is scary, man. You got concussion histories, and nobody's sure if Chytil's ever going to play again. And he plays game 3, and he's all excited and happy, and that's awesome. And then, I mean, I can't even imagine what he's going through to wake up not feeling good and have to report it and be out of the game. But if Filip Chytil cannot go in game 5, that pretty much means it comes down to Brodzinski or Rempe. If it's up to me, and if Filip Chytil cannot go, I'm putting Matt Rempe back into the lineup for the Rangers. There's certainly some risk reward when it comes to Rempe. I think as far as the risk, he has very, very clearly been targeted by referees during this playoff run. He's getting penalized left and right, and basically getting penalized for checking too hard and or being bigger than his opponents. Of the 4 penalties or however many it was that were called against Rempe, it felt like maybe one of them was actually legit. We kind of went through the entire gauntlet. Not going to do that again. But, you've got a situation where Rempe's out there getting knocked to the ice by Drury, and then you've got Kelly Sutherland coming over and sticking his finger in Rempe's face and lecturing him. Like what was Rempe supposed to do in that situation? So he's been targeted, and if he's going to be on the ice, you've always got that possibility that he's going to hit somebody and get called for a penalty. They'll call it roughing, or they'll call it charging, or whatever. But that is a very real possibility that could happen. Bottom line, Matt Rempe is more likely to go out there and take a penalty than Johnny Brodzinski is. I mean, that's just a fact. So that's the risk part of it. But I will say the Ranger record when Matt Rempe is in the lineup is getting very, very difficult to ignore. Because Rempe is a bit of a polarizing Ranger, and there's some people that may not be the biggest fans of him. There's people that love Matt Rempe, though. And, I feel like I'm kind of in between. I try to be as objective as I can on here. But again, Matt Rempe, it's hard to ignore the Ranger record when he's in the lineup. And it's hard to ignore the fact that he does seem to give this team a jolt. And the fact that this game is going to be at home, he's going to electrify the fans and get them going a little bit. I mean, it's going to be electric either way, but Matt Rempe will get the fans going. That is for sure. And when Matt Rempe does play for the Rangers, 23 career games in the NHL for Rempe, and obviously 6 in the playoffs, 17 in the regular season. The Rangers have won 20 of those 23 games where Rempe has played. Now, of course, I don't want to go nuts here. That's not the only reason why the Rangers have won these games. And obviously, they were a very good team long before he ever got called up. But again, you see a record like that, and it does get very, very difficult to ignore. That is for sure. And something else that I'll mention here that's very important, and I think a couple of you guys pointed this out on Twitter as well, because I was talking about, not wanting to mess with the lineup going into Game 3. I feel like, for Game 5, the thing that kind of tips the scales in Rempe's favor over Brodzinski is the very simple fact that, a couple of you guys, Abe on Twitter, and a couple of you other guys as well, pointed this out to me, that, of course, the home team gets the final change. And so the Rangers are going to be at home for Game 5. That means that they can kind of pick and choose their spots in the game when they use Matt Rempe. If they put him on the ice, Brind'Amour doesn't get to counter and put his guys out there. The Rangers have the final change. So you can decide, what situations and how you want to use Matt Rempe and control the matchups a little bit better. And, obviously, I think that's beneficial for the Rangers, because if he's on the road and he's out there for a defensive zone draw or whatever it might be, then, Brind'Amour, and he can put out his best players and guys that can kind of take advantage of Matt Rempe. But when you're at home, you've got more control of those kinds of things. And if the Rangers do get into a situation where it's late in the game or even overtime, God help us all, you can very easily just remove Rempe from the game, basically, and go with 11 forwards. As we saw in the really long Game 2 double overtime win for the Rangers, they did just fine with 11 forwards. Canes were only using 9, so the Rangers had the advantage there. And in that situation, I think for sure you'd pull Rempe out of the rotation. And nothing here is against Johnny Brodzinski, a hardworking player. It was nice to see him get into a game. He only played 849, but this is something I keep going back to. And you could use this for pretty much it's not just a Rempe thing. You can use this for any hockey player, probably any athlete in general at just about any level. But the ultimate test here, if you're kind of on the fence, Brodzinski, Rempe, Brodzinski, take a look at your opponent and take a look at the Carolina Hurricanes. Who would they rather have the Rangers put into their lineup? Would they want to have to deal with Johnny Brodzinski, or would they want to have to deal with Matt Rempe? I don't think they want any part of Matt Rempe. I don't think too many teams do. And if you put Brodzinski out there, I mean, look, Brodzinski, again, solid, hardworking, bottom six forward, nothing against Brodzinski whatsoever. He has a cool story this year, but he's not going to impact the game, I don't think, in as much of a positive way as Matt Rempe can for the New York Rangers. So I'm going back to Rempe, leave all the lines the same, and take it from there and hopefully close this thing out in 5 games. I think, before the series, like I said, just about every single one of us would have signed up for that in approximately 2 seconds. So that's pretty much it. One more thing I wanted to mention, Hartford Wolfpack moving on. They win game 4 against the Bruins. They win that series 3-1, 2-1 victory in overtime. Jake Lecision scoring both goals in the series clincher, including the overtime winner, obviously. 9:41 into overtime, you've got Victor Mancini taking a shot, and it deflects off of Lecision, goes into the net, and the Rangers, the Wolfpack rather, eliminate the Bruins. And now the Wolfpack going to play the Hershey Bears in the round of 8 in a best of 5. Pack on the road on Thursday and Saturday. They will be home on the following Wednesday and Friday, and then on the road the following Sunday if necessary. Obviously, games 4 and 5 are only if necessary. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And again, I think Ranger fans should still feel positive going forward. Bottom line, there have been 4 one-goal games played in this series. 2 have gone into overtime. They've all been decided by razor-thin margins, and the Rangers have found a way in 3 of the 4 games to be at their absolute best when it counted the most. That's who this team is. That's what they do. They still have control of this series, but obviously a huge Game 5 coming up for this team, and hopefully they can close it out there and move on to the Eastern Conference Final. But that will do it for today, guys. Once again, if you'd like to get in touch with this podcast, please send an email to lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Once again, that is lockedonnyrangers@gmail.com. Definitely give us a follow on Twitter as well, @LO_NY_Rangers. Once again, that's @LO_NY_Rangers. And definitely subscribe to Locked On New York Rangers YouTube channel. Huge thanks to those of you who have already done so. We are getting very, very close to 3,000 subscribers. If you have a minute, go ahead and subscribe. New episodes every single day. But yes, thank you guys again, and I will see you next time.